Greetings and salutations everybody, it's AFarCryAway, and today I'm making a little bit of a rambling video on Insurgency Sandstorm. I figured between my big major scripted videos I should do some kind of off-the-cuff videos, because I figured the way YouTube is, you get basically punished unless you are uploading all the time. So I figured maybe I can spice things up on the channel, give you guys some more content, and that way maybe the YouTube algorithms won't fuck me so hard. So yeah, I just wanted to dive into Sandstorm again because I feel like my video was a little too critical. However, I do stand by everything I said in my previous Sandstorm video. I'll leave a link to it in the description so you guys can go watch it if you need to. But yeah, the game has a lot of issues. Obviously, it was in beta, and we actually have another beta, I believe, coming towards the end of the month that will last into September, where we actually get full access to the game. So, I guess my main thing I want to bring up here is I feel like, although we have a lot of justifiable criticism of the game, I do think people are being just a little bit too harsh on New World Interactive. Okay, so we obviously all know that optimization was a big sticking point, right? A lot of people couldn't even get like 30 frames per second in the beta. And that's kind of ridiculous when you're playing a first-person shooter where, you know, snap reaction time is very important, especially one like Sandstorm where the movement speed has been increased as much as it has been. I know a lot of Insurgency veterans also didn't like the new movement speed. And there's also a lot of issues in regards to hit detection, so all of those things kind of combined into this perfect storm of not good. Now, I know this is going to sound really weird, but in my efforts to make the game run better, I ended up just joking around and putting the game in like 800 by 600 resolution with all the graphics turned down and like a 50% resolution decrease. And I was getting way more up in like the 90 frames per second area, and I know this is silly to play it like that, but when you're playing it and the performance is like 10 out of 10, like in terms of frame rate, the mechanics actually hold up really well. I just think that all the things combined with the optimization, the hit reg due to the online beta and the nature of an online beta being a little bit janky with the netcode, I just think it didn't feel good to people, especially people coming from, you know, Insurgency source and, you know, having that split-second reaction time aiming with 120 frames per second on ultra settings. You know, you're not really quite getting that here. And to be fair, I think New World Interactive are going to probably do a good job of trying to optimize this game. I don't see them not focusing on it. They've obviously done dev streams where they've talked about, hey, we're going to do optimization passes. But we don't really know if it'll ever get to a state where it's perfect, but I can tell you already, I know for a fact it will be much better when it actually comes out and then further down the line as well. But I guess just to make like a quick point out of what I was saying earlier, playing the game at a higher frame rate made a lot of things work. A lot of things clicked that weren't clicking when I was trying to play the game on like normal resolutions and settings with a lower frame rate. The higher time to, you know, or sorry, the quicker sprinting and stuff, it kind of led to this gameplay where I think a lot of people from Insurgency just felt like disgusted because, you know, you could sprint around in Insurgency, but in this game it's like even faster. But to me, it didn't feel too much faster, and honestly, the only real complaint I have about things like the speed are when I was playing co-op, sometimes these bots would just bunny hop, like Call of Duty style, into the room and shoot at you with precision accuracy. And I think things like that need to be changed. Like, I've had it happen not once, but at least 3 times where a bot would just jump into the doorway, or the door frame, and like 360 no-scope me in the corner while I was like pre-aimed, you know, so that's something that is wrong with the game that they should fix for sure. But I don't think the speed itself is inherently an issue, because you can still be rewarded for playing the game tactically. You can still be rewarded for playing the game at a slow and methodical pace. Now, if you're in PvP, having that speed is an advantage because you can reposition faster. See, I don't see it as a run-and-gun tactical thing. I see it more as like a repositioning tool. Like, I'm not going to try to sprint into the objective like power sliding and shooting people. Like, I guess you can do it. Like, it's possible to if you put a laser sight on your gun and maybe have an SMG, or like the AKs can work for it sometimes. But I don't know, it just seems really like it won't be as effective. You can probably get a few kills with it, a few picks with it, but it's just not going to be the ideal way to play the game. So I guess my point is, I don't think the speed hurts the game. That's my opinion. You guys are entitled to your own opinions, which are great, you know, it's great we all have opinions, but I just figured I'd throw mine out there because I don't think that's something that necessarily needs a huge change. However, maybe a little bit of a slowdown wouldn't hurt, especially when it comes to like the bots, because sometimes they do some ridiculous stuff. But see, in my opinion, I think that that added speed increases the tension of large-scale firefights because you have people zipping around behind cover all around you all the time. And it kind of does make it harder for you to pull off precision aiming shots. But at the same time, I feel like that added pace really makes Insurgency feel more realistic because people won't be slowly, you know, going between cover in real life. You know, people are going to be sprinting their asses off if they can, right? And I just think having that in the game is nice. However, I guess if there was a way to increase the accuracy stats of, you know, slow walking and doing things like that, it would definitely help the game too, because I think people who want to play it tactically should be rewarded for playing it that way. Another thing I kind of noticed after making the video was that, you know how there's the fast reloading mechanic in Sandstorm where you can hold, or I think it's if you tap R once, you just do like a standard reload and you put your magazine back in your vest. But then if you double tap it, it does a quick one where you like throw the magazine on the ground and then you can, you know, you get rid of it, but then you put a new fresh one in. But it's like faster. So I think what they should do is learn a little bit from Ground Branch, because that game just came out in early access on Steam, and you actually can pick up your magazines off the floor in that. So let's say you had to do a speed reload and then you cleared, you know, the hallway or whatever, and if you go back, then you can pick your magazine back up and still keep the ammunition in it. That would be really cool. And it might slow down the gameplay a little bit, but if you're like a really good player, or if you're playing co-op, all that ammo will be necessary because you're not just going to be dying and respawning and resupplying for free. So having the ability to come back through and get your ammunition is going to be pretty cool if you could do it. Now, I don't know if they're ever going to implement that, but I don't see it being too out of the realms of possibility. I think it would be a small quality of life adjustment, and I just think it's a cool idea. I mean, why would you integrate speed reloading and the ability to drop your magazines on the ground with physics and everything if you couldn't just like reach back down and pick them back up again? It might be too late to add something like that to the game, but I don't know at the same time, and there might be more important things for them to address before doing something like that. But I think the idea is a sound idea, it's realistic, and it would further emphasize the whole like tactical authenticity kind of angle of Insurgency. However, I understand a lot of people don't see Insurgency as an authentical tactical shooter, and I can kind of see why. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I do really think the game is pretty grounded in reality for the most part, and it's no milsim, right? But I think having the ability to do things like that would also further it more into the genre and make it more of its own thing, and make it a little bit more, I guess, cool. There was also another issue that kind of cropped up the more I played of the beta before it ended, and that is the animations. In terms of like when you're hugged up against a wall or a piece of like chest-high cover that you can peek over, when you get close to it, your character holds the gun, you know, closer to their chest, aiming it up in the air, because obviously your gun doesn't clip through walls, right? But it feels really janky, and I feel like it's gotten me killed a few times, and I really want to see if there's a way that they could improve upon that, because it feels like the animation from having it up to back into your, you know, ready to fire position, I guess you could call that like, was it ready high to like the firing position? The time it takes to go between those two is a little bit too long. It's almost like your character in game just kind of sluggishly brings it back up to their eye level with the sights, and it just, especially when you're using iron sights, it feels really slow and bad. And it definitely had me missing shots I should have probably been hitting because I didn't have enough time to react to, you know, getting my sights back on target. And there's things like that in the game, like with the animations. While the animations are very smooth and look cool for the most part, they're also pretty janky in terms of like timing and execution. So like, even with the speed reloads, it seemed like some of the speed reloads were almost worse to do because the animation looks really flashy and nice, but it almost felt like it got like in the way of what you could see, and it would give you kind of a disadvantage while reloading, as opposed to a normal reload, in which case you would just kind of be able to see what's going on while doing a slightly slower reload animation. And then there's one more thing that's a little bit weird about Insurgency Sandstorm to me, is that there's like a really weirdly high time to kill in this game, or at least it feels like there is. Which normally higher time to kills aren't that bad in games, but in this one it feels really weird because you go from Insurgency on Source, where you would shoot a guy at semi-automatic, right, like once or twice in the chest and he would go down, especially if you were using like the AP ammo. And especially if they didn't have the body armor on. But in this game, it really feels like you have to hit people like 4 to 6 to 7 times before they go down. And maybe I'm being a little over-exaggerating there, but it definitely goes between 4 and 5 shots more than I would like. And it's really noticeable when you're using the AK variants, because those weapons have slightly lower firing rates than like the M4 and things like that. And so you really notice in the time in between your shots connecting, and in the game it feels really bizarre because it just feels like you have to like full auto everybody. There's like, it doesn't feel like semi-automatic fire is rewarded like it was in Insurgency on Source, and I think having the benefits of the accuracy with the lower rate of fire with semi-automatic is kind of like the point. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like having everyone just sticking on full auto just doesn't seem like the right way to go, because the engagement distances are really large, right? And I guess tap firing is a thing. Like when you're in full auto, you can still tap fire and burst fire at range, which does help a little bit with the recoil and whatnot. But it really does seem like more shots to kill versus more recoil is like an issue that they need to look into with this game. But I don't really have any like definitive evidence to back any of this stuff up that I'm saying, so I guess it's kind of more just speculation from me, but it really feels like the time to kill is just kind of all over the place, especially when you're going up against the bots. But then again, this could all be due to that netcode like I mentioned earlier. And lastly, I know a lot of people were complaining about some of the maps and how they were laid out and how they played. I honestly didn't find them that bad. I personally really enjoyed all of the maps once I kind of started to learn them, like how they flow. There are definitely some maps where there's some weirdness to them. I can't remember the map's name, but the one where there's like just like a part of it where there's like an open hill with like a grain field. It looks really pretty, but it's kind of random. And when you're playing like Terrorist Hunt, or sorry, PvP mode, or sorry, PvE mode co-op on it, they just kind of spawn the enemies randomly out there, and they just kind of crest over the hill. So I guess it's kind of like neat, but it just feels like really out of place and random. I don't know, it's kind of like you have this like really good CQB for the most part map inside of like a city, and then it just has this like random countryside part with no cover, so I don't really understand like why it exists other than to be a spawn for the co-op, I suppose. Then there's the like oil refinery map with all of the like elevated platforms and such. I won't lie, it was pretty weird and confusing the first time playing it, but honestly, again, the more I played the map and started to learn it, the more it kind of starts to make sense to me. And I honestly didn't think there was anything wrong really with any of the maps. Like, those are just nitpicks at this point, because like I personally didn't have issues with them, but I know some people did, and I just wanted to like bring that up too. And really, if anything, I'm actually looking forward to seeing all of the new maps that get included upon full release, or if during the next beta we'll get to see some new maps, that'd be really nice too. And lastly, another thing that kind of came up in the comments are people were asking about the campaign to Sandstorm. And yes, if you haven't been following like news on Sandstorm, the campaign got dropped from the game, sadly. And I think that was just due to them not thinking they were going to have enough time to finish it and polish it up to, you know, a good enough standard. And while I really would have liked to have seen it, I can definitely understand why New World Interactive didn't want to force it. I think if they had tried to force it, it might have been a little cringeworthy, it might have made the rest of the game worse. And seeing the state that the multiplayer is in currently, I think they made the right decision to drop it, just because a lot of time is going to be, in development and stuff, is going to be needed on the multiplayer, so them trying to split resources into the single player campaign just seems kind of like a waste. Now, I hope they didn't like totally scrap it, because if they do get the multiplayer kind of like sorted and working and awesome, I would love to see them actually add in the campaign later, even if it's just like a single mission, because I remember in Insurgency Source there was the training mission, and it was scripted, and it was really freaking cool for the time, because you started the mission, you did your basic training and whatnot, but then your base comes under attack. and you have to like hold off against waves of insurgents because like swarming you. And I just remember it was really intense and pretty awesome. So if they had like a single mission just to show off like what the vision of their single player campaign would have been like, and maybe just make it like into a, I guess, sort of like tutorial mission thing, I think that would be a nice way to be like an homage to Insurgency, and then also to be like a good training tutorial session. Like for example, when you first start the game and you're playing and you jump into a Jeep, it is pretty intuitive how to drive it. However, I know a lot of people probably had issues getting the car started and figuring out how it worked. So, you know, little things like that would have been really nice in like a tutorial mission, for example. And in there they could also teach you like how to do the fast reload, standard reload, and maybe walk you through like what guns are good for what situations, and just, it could be a really cool scripted moment, and it could have like a flashback to the first Insurgency where you basically get ambushed or attacked. And maybe they can do like a short form version of the story, because from what I read back on my first update on Sandstorm, the story was supposed to be about basically like a rebel group and like them teaming up with like US forces, like special forces, and then fighting off insurgents. And it sounds really great and it sounds really fun, but of course they didn't really seem to have enough time for it. So I'd love to see them consolidate all of that creative energy into like a massive single mission later on in the game's lifespan. But again, like I said, I really want the multiplayer to be, you know, polished and perfect before they even attempt something like this, because like I said, we want more developers on the multiplayer first, because that's really where the long-lasting content lies, and hopefully they can get that all sorted in time, and then we can see something like that in the future for the game. And yeah, that's pretty much all of the things I've heard bad about the beta, and all the things I had to say bad that I didn't really think about during my first initial video. I know this one's kind of been off the cuff, and I'm sorry if I kind of mumbled a little bit in this video, but I do want to try to do more regular content uploads of me just kind of rambling about the latest gaming news and tactical, you know, games and PC gaming stuff. So if you guys like this kind of thing, please let me know in the comments. I would really appreciate that, and I will still be doing my like scripted, good quality, not rambly kind of videos, don't worry. So I have a Killing Floor 2 video coming out about a mod that I got to stream today, and I also have other plans in the works. So yeah, hopefully you guys are looking forward to all of that stuff, because I sure am. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.